So today we're going to be tying a Renegade, which is a really good streamer fly, which I've had a lot of luck with, and it's kind of a fun one to tie, especially if you're just beginning. I'm going to do a couple of small variations here where I'm going to give it a little bit of a red hot spot on the back and then up at the head, maybe a little bit thicker wire going through Peacock Curl. In our vise right now we've got a size 10 and it's extra long, and so we're just going to go ahead and just right here behind the eye, going to go ahead and start our thread wraps here with this red thread. The body here again is going to be made out of Peacock Curl, which is a nice and fluffy kind of substance. And because we're making it out of Peacock Curl, I'm not as concerned about getting too much bulk in the body here. There obviously are flies where that is a concern, and I pay a lot of attention to it. This one I'm not as worried about. So I've got my thread secured to my hook here, and I may take a few more wraps, kind of just a trip up and back, just to keep everything, make sure everything is where I want it to be. And then we're just going to go back around here to the back of the hook. And we're going to take a few wraps with the red thread here when we get towards the back. That will be serving as a hot spot on this, or a red butt on this. You can do hot spots out of lots of different, you know, chartreuse or orange or fluorescent yellow, fluorescent orange. In this case, we're just using plain sheer 14-aught red. And I'm going to start the body or the back wraps of Hackle back right where the barb of the hook would be, which I've mashed down here. So I'm already closer to the bend of the hook than where I want the body to start. And that's okay, because that's the intent here, is to get this a little bit of red showing at the back end of this fly here by taking a few thread wraps around the bend. And we're just going to come right back up to where we want to tie in our first material. Okay, so here we are. We're back there about where the eye of the, or where the bend of the hook is, or where the barb would have been. And we'll go ahead and grab ourselves a Hackle feather. On the back, we're going to use this brown, it's almost a tan color. And I'm going to want to tie that in with the shiny side, or the convex side facing me. So you can see it's a little bit shinier on that side than it is on this side. So the shinier side is the one I want to tie in. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that stem here at a good angle on my hook. I'm going to leave myself a little bit of extra stem just for the first couple of wraps. And I can actually crank down on this pretty hard. I'm not worried about breaking the stem. The stem is pretty stout. So I've got a few wraps in on either side, and from there I'm just going to go ahead and let my thread travel back up. I'm not going to clip that off. I'm not going to clip the stem off. I'm just going to use it here to just go up the shank of the hook, and then we're just going to come back because we're going to need to tie off that Hackle after we get done wrapping around the fly. This is another one of those spots where it's helpful, for me anyway, to use a wet finisher. You can do a half hitch, but you've got a long way to travel. And I want this thread to stay pretty much right here in this area. I don't want it up here. And if I do a half hitch, sometimes it'll slide off on me. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is just so I can use the bobbin cradle. So I'm just going to throw in, see how easy that is once you figure out how to use the whip finisher. I'm able to put that knot exactly where I want it. No, I don't have to guess or anything. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and take my thread, and I'm going to let it lay across my bobbin cradle, and we're hands free. From here, I'm going to bend that forward a little bit to get a kink in it, to get that started a little bit. And I'm going to be using the rotary feature, and you'll note that I'm going to be taking some pretty wide turns. And I want to get at least 1 or 2 full wraps at the very back. And then we will start moving forward. And you'll notice that I'm pulling this feather towards the eye, and then I'm bringing it right back. And I'm doing that because I just don't want my hackle feather to break off. So that's about all we'll need, probably even more than what we need. So we're just going to come back here because we've got to secure this hackle. So I'm back to about where I want it. I want to keep some pressure on it. I'm going to just wiggle my thread back and forth as I'm making these turns around the fibers. And I'm doing that because it just helps keep you from trapping too many of these fibers. So I'm going to take 2 or 3 good wraps behind it. Then I'm going to take a couple of wraps here in front of it as well, just to make sure we've got that guy locked in place. Pretty comfortable with that. So I'm just going to sneak in now and turn my vise a little bit so I have a better angle on this, because I want to clip at the stem and very close to the shank of the hook. So yeah, something like that. And I still have enough probably to do a few additional flies here. The first thing for the body, the center part of this fly, I'm going to use actually a gold tinsel, and this is a flat tinsel, which is a little bit of a difference from how a lot of people might tie this pattern. But I'm just going to hold this up against the shank of the hook. I'm going to take a couple of wraps rearward. I'm going to go ahead and let that slough off to the lens side of the hook. And then I'm going to come back forward and we'll just use some careful wraps to just keep that tinsel in place. Here I'm just, building up bulk that I don't necessarily need, but I already have it towards the back of the fly, so I may as well build some of it up there. So we've got our flat gold tinsel in place. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to want to tie in a couple of peacock curls, and they're going to be the kind of the fluffy body here. So here's my peacock. You can see it's well traveled and well worn. It's about time to break out another one. So I'm just going to grab 2 of these fibers. So now that I've got my peacock curl off, I'm going to snip this somewhere right in this vicinity, like that. I just do that because the tip ends this is a delicate feather or herl as it is. The deeper you go on that herl, the stronger it is. So basically, by snipping off a little bit there at the top end, it just helps me ensure that I'm at least starting my wraps with a more stout piece of that peacock curl. Okay, so the other thing is when I get back here and I'm tying this in, I really don't want to clench down really hard on this thread. Sorry, I've got allergies today. I don't know what the heck. Anyway, I don't want to crank down too hard because it'll cut right into the shaft of these feathers and they'll just break right off. From here, we're just going to travel back up to closer to the eye of the hook here. We've got our gold wire tied in. I'm just doing a little few extra wraps here and there just to make sure that I have a fairly consistent body thickness throughout. I'm just going to bring this up here to probably right about there. I do want to leave some space because I'm going to tie in another hackle at the end of this fly that will be white. So from here I'm going to go ahead and whip finish with my whip finisher. Because I'm going to use that bobbin cradle once again as I tie this peacock curl into place. So put my whip finisher back where I can find it. I'm going to stand up my bobbin cradle, get a few wraps back onto the bobbin here and just let that hang right off. We're hands free. We've got our peacock and I'm just going to hold that straight up. And I want it nice and tight in here against those hackle fibers. And I am going to need to be really careful, as always, to not hit these hackle stems with my hook point, because it will just cut right through them and they'll be broken off and I'll have to tie them in again. But once I'm free and clear, you can see we can just kind of take touching wraps of the material moving up. This is the benefit of one of the many benefits of the rotating vise. So I'm not wrapping over the top and then pulling it underneath over the top, underneath, I can just pull my material straight up while I rotate the vise, and it will wrap that stuff right around the hook. I'm going to keep tension on those Peacock Curls. You'll note that the thread is coming back towards the bend of the hook. The herls are coming more towards the eye of the hook, which means that these wraps are going over the top of those Peacock Curls, hopefully locking them in place. And after I've got a couple of wraps behind it, I'll take a couple of wraps up towards the eye of the hook. And with that, I'll go ahead and clip these fibers out. And you can see it's made a really nice plump body here. So now we're going to take our tinsel, and I'm going to counter wrap this tinsel, which means I'm wrapping it in the opposite direction of what I used when I was tying in the peacock herl here. And we're not using the rotation here, we're just kind of going right around the hook. Try to make them even. The reality here is I'm putting this material in place not so much to create segmentation as it is I'm trying to make this fly a little bit more durable by counter wrapping this on it. Okay, so I've got it where I need it. This isn't a wire, so it would come unwound, so we're going to go ahead and take a couple of wraps behind it to lock this into place as well, and then we'll pull it back towards the bend of the hook and do a few thread wraps in front as well. We'll go ahead and clip that off. So we've got all of that in place. From here, we're going to just go ahead and go backwards a little bit. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and turn to our white hackle feather. I've already pre-measured it. I've already cleaned off the stem. It's ready to go. So I'm going to want to tie this in again, just like the last one, where I have the shiny face facing me. And I'm just going to kind of hold that at a 90-degree angle against the 45-degree angle, I guess, against the hook shank there. We'll take a few wraps to lock it in place. Then I usually will take a couple of wraps behind it as well. So that's all I'm doing here is sneaking that thread behind and over the top of that material. And then I'm going to go ahead and take some wraps moving up towards the eye. So you can see if I turn it like that, you can see that stem is sticking out there. And I've got it secure enough for me, and so I'm just going to take my scissors in here and I'm going to clip that right off. And then you'll see there's a little nub of a stem there from the feather, and I'm just going to tie right over the top of it and clean it up with some thread wraps there. I do want to try to make as even of a body as I possibly can through this portion of the fly. It just will help that hackle tie down much cleaner. And I'll be completely honest, I am a horrible dry fly tire. I'm getting better, but hackles, it's fun for me, but the hackles are often very difficult. So we're with finishing here, not because we're finished, but we're with finishing because I, again, want to use my bobbin cradle. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that whip finish in. So I've got a knot in place. I'll just rotate my bobbin cradle back over here. And we're hands free for the third time. So now I'm just going to hold this feather kind of straight up. And just like in the back, I'm going to want to make sure I get a couple of complete rotations before starting to move forward. And then I'm going to just take touching turns moving forward. And that's probably about all I'm going to need, is that right there. I'm going to wiggle my thread as I tie it over the top of that white hackle feather, just so I don't trap as many hackle fibers. Secure that in place, and then I'm going to pull that feather backwards towards the end of the hook, and I'm going to take a few wraps on this side as well. And as usual, I trapped a bunch of fibers, most of them over the eye of the hook, but I will circle back and take care of that problem here in a moment. So for now, I just want to find where that stem is tied in, because that's where I want to clip this hackle feather off. We're going to go ahead and reach back for our whip finisher again. We'll throw in a 4 or 5 turn whip finish here, trying not to trap hackle fibers if they will behave. And let that slide right off. And we just pull it tight. So there you have it. This is the Renegade pattern. It's going to work great as a streamer on lakes and on rivers. We used a little bit of a thicker tinsel on the midsection there, which kind of just makes it show up a little bit better, but it also serves that purpose of making this fly more durable by holding peacock curl in place. And hopefully you can see better than me, but in the camera you can see where we went down the back of the hook here a little ways. So we've got a red hot spot there, and because we tied it with red thread and tied off up here, we've got a red hot spot up there. It's a great pattern, catches fish. It's pretty dang fun to tie, so give it a shot.